Hello everybody, so today I will be talking about gut loading your insects for your reptiles, but mostly we're talking about crested geckos here. And we're also going to be talking about food, like if they don't eat their Pangea or Repashy, or if they won't eat insects, some tips and tricks you can do to help them eat or to make sure that they're eating. So let's talk about gut loading your insects. I only use crickets for right now. I am looking into getting dubias, but I'm sure this can work for dubias as well. So gut loading them, you could feed them the food you're gonna feed them. So you could mix this together in a little bowl, put it in their tank, and they will eat it, and it will be gut loaded. You can also feed them carrots, spinach, fruits, things like that, so that way that they can be gut loaded as well. And then you could also get different things that are powdered for gut loading as well. So if, let's say, you don't want to feed them your Pangea for whatever reason, you can actually get something like this. So this is Repashy food, super low insect gut loading formula. So you could get something like that to just get up. This stuff is really good. I've been using it, as you guys can tell. It's like down to here. 10 out of 10 recommend this stuff. But again, this is also a really good option, especially if your gecko won't eat their food. You could gut load the crickets to make sure that they are still getting the nutrients from it. You're going to wait 24 hours and then begin feeding them. Because if you get them right from the pet store or Petco or PetSmart or wherever you get them, you're going to want to gut load them before you feed them, just to make sure that they're getting the nutrients. And you're going to sprinkle calcium powder on it. Depending on if you have UVB, you could get it without D3. If you do have UVB, and if you don't, get it with D3, so that they are still getting their calcium intake. So yeah, and then, so that takes care of gut loading. So again, you could feed them like carrots. I recommend carrots. You could feed them apple slices, definitely like spinach and like lettuces and things like that. Cucumbers are good too. Like just different produce items, I guess. But make sure you do your research, but I just normally go with some of these things, and some carrots is my go-to for gut loading. Alright, on to if your crested gecko won't eat crickets. So you have two options you can do. The first one is gonna sound really weird, which is why most people opt for the second option, is you're going to rip their head, and there's like the juice or like the goopy stuff, and that will attract them maybe to eat it. Well, you actually have three options. So that one, so all this goop that from you rip it off a little bit, their goop, and you put it by the gecko's nose. You let it sniff them, and they might go for it. Second option is to always try to get a bigger size, but again, the rule is, so get a cricket that can fit between their eyes, like the space between their eyeballs on their head. So let's say, like right here, I'd have to get a cricket that'd be that big. I know my nose is really big and stuff, but that's what I'd have to do. So again, let's say you're feeding small, but the space between their eyes, let's say, will now fit a medium cricket. Size up and see if they'll take the offering. That's always very important, because sometimes they might just see it and be like, that's really small, it's not worth hunting. And your third option is to get your Pangea. Like, just make it like you normally would, and just put some on the cricket, like rub it around in the food. This will work especially if your crested gecko is crazy about their food, because I know that they're out there, or they really love their food, I know. And then we'll see if they could eat it. Worst case scenario, they lick off the Pangea and call it a day. That is the worst case scenario. Now, what I recommend doing if your crested gecko won't touch, let's say, crickets, try different options, especially if you got it from a breeder or somewhere that maybe doesn't feed crickets very often. They may just have a taste for a different insect, or might be used to different insects such as dubias or dubia roaches, or maybe try those out and see if they'll eat them. Alright, Now for the case of your crested gecko will not eat the Pangea or Repashy. So the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you try different varieties of the Pangea and or Repashy. So let's say you're just having the red bag of Pangea, maybe try the watermelon, maybe try the fig, maybe try the papaya. Try those things. See if they apricot too. See if they just have a certain taste bud, because some crested geckos can be really picky. So just try different options. And then if they won't eat anything for Pangea, see if they'll eat Repashy. Again, if you got them from a breeder or from like an expo breeder, maybe talk to them and say like, oh, what did you feed them? What did you feed them before I got them, or whatever? And let's say that they say, well, since they hatched, they've been eating Pangea. So now okay, do you know what kind like you usually feed? And they will just say like, some might say, oh, I've tried a mixture of them. I just kind of just pick one that I have out of my Pangea collection of like fig, papaya, and all those things. And then maybe some will particularly say, well, I only feed this type of Pangea, such as the watermelon one. And then you'd be like, okay, well, I'll give that a try because that might be what they're used to. Now, the number one rule is, especially if you first got it, I would wait a week or two before you handle it for any reason. But that also means because it's in a new spot, a new tank, a new enclosure, it might not want to eat because it's really stressed out. How would you feel if you were in your home, got pulled out of it, put in a container, and were shipped or on a table in expo with bright lights and lots of people looking at you? Then you got picked, taken out of that container, and thrown into a whole nother tank. You'd be stressed out too. Especially depending on how big the animal is. You're giant compared to it. So it's going to be stressed out and, it might not want to eat. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm feeling stressed, my stomach doesn't sit well with me, so I'm not hungry. But again, I just always put food out for them, no matter if you think they're eating or not. Always, always, always have a bowl of food in their tanks, especially for crested geckos. Always do that. So now we're going into the territory of, okay, I've had it for a while now, I still am not sure if it's eating or not. But again, depending on the size, if it's a baby and you have this huge bowl of food, you might not be able to tell because, think of how small their stomach is. So again, that could play a big role. Let's say that you have this huge bowl of food, the gecko's like this big, it's not going to eat a lot. So you might not even see the tongue marks of it eating. So, like I said, you could gut load a cricket or an insect and feed them that to make sure that they're still getting the nutrients, and just leave the bowl of Pangea in their tanks. Most of the time they are eating. But again, you could take these few other ideas or tips to see what works best for you. First one is syringe feeding. Not a lot of people go for it because if you use it incorrectly, they could suffocate and die. I have used that before, but these are safer options. Use a Q-tip, put the food on the end of it because it's soft, and just put it by the gecko's nose, and if not, put it by the mouth, not the nostrils, the mouth, and just kind of wipe it on it and see if it'll lick it off. This is another idea or situation that you could do. You could leave it in the tank for a few hours. Of course, you would do this at night when they're awake, or you could leave them in there overnight. I personally would not do that, but to each their own. So those are usually what can help you make sure the gecko's eating. But the most important thing you could do for them, well, I guess second other than feed them and make sure that they're getting the nutrients they need, is to buy a scale. A kitchen scale that can read in grams is great. It doesn't have to be this heavy duty huge scale. It could literally be like $10 on Amazon. And as long as the reviews are good and it reads in grams, please weigh your gecko. If they're babies or you want to make sure that they're eating, I usually weigh mine once a week or once every other week. And then for all my other geckos, I weigh once a month, just to make sure that they're gaining weight and not losing it, because losing weight, a lot of weight at a time, can be a sign of sickness, and it is a way that you could catch it early. So yeah, those are the tips that I have for you. that is gut loading and making and helping your gecko make sure that it is eating. So other than that, that is all I have for you guys. So thank you so much for watching.